Hey, howdy. So, I mean, tomorrow I go back home for Thanksgiving break. I thought to myself, you know what? Screw it. Let's just do something. Let's do something stupid for the. Oh. Do something dumb just for the occasion. I think I like these options. And Rainstorm because I actually like having fun. I have become Madeline Celeste, Destroyer of Worlds. That is some truly magnificent movement tech. And there's ways to do more with it, but I am not good enough with this character to fully capitalize on the tech. I have a basic understanding of it, and that's it. But I may as well explain how the tech works to people who don't know. So this ability is aerobatics. It's the alternate utility skill that's unlocked for Pilot. And by the way, this character is Pilot. New character. To my memory, the way that you unlock them is by killing all 3 bosses that can spawn in the first stage. So Magma Worm, Colossus, and Wandering Vagrant. You defeat all 3 of them. They don't have to be in the same run or anything. It's just in general, and you unlock Pilot. You can unlock aerobatics through one of the Providence trials, which is just like a set of bonus trials that they've added. Hang on. Zoom out the camera. There's just a set of challenge trials that they've added. And you clear them and you get either you unlock some new items, you unlock some new skills, some skins for your characters. It's fun. It's a really good feature. The usual caveat is that some of them are tough as nails. Luckily, the aerobatics one is not one of those. The difficulty is pretty manageable. It's more of just screw around and make it to the end of the course. But anyway, I'm getting off track. So this ability. At face value, what it does is you use it, and if you're not holding any specific direction, you just get sent forward. If you hold up, it's angled up a little bit. If you hold down, it's angled down a little bit. That's all well and good. Kind of similar in usage to the dash from Celeste, which is why I've been calling myself Madeline Celeste. But the similarity is deeper than that, because if you hold... This is going to turn into almost like I'm describing tech out of a Source game. If you hold down, but don't hold forward and backwards, you do that, and you just get a big burst of speed. And because you're not holding forward or backward, the game doesn't cap your momentum. Or it doesn't lock your momentum. So you can just do a huge leaping bound. And so long as you, and I'm bad at it because it's frame perfect, but if you manage to b-hop perfectly, you actually preserve the velocity for quite a while. I'm also just bad at the thing in general, but again, it's to do it well, the timing is super precise. Oh, right, and there's also that issue that since you're holding down, sometimes the character likes to grab onto trees. That isn't that big of a deal. But there's some more advanced variations of this mechanic. Like, for instance, if you angle it down... Let me see if I get this right. If you angle it down... So you have to hold a direction and down, then let go of both, then jump. If you do all of that, Let me see if I get this right. There we go. I'm surprised I got that first try. You get... I think that technically goes further because you're starting the dash from... You're not starting the dash from a standstill. But look at that. That was from... I have no movement speed increases. This is just base movement speed. And I can kind of just zoom. It's so good. It's good and it's fun, and I love this game. Risk of Rain Returns is amazing. Hopu did an awesome job with it. Very, very, very happy with this. I may as well just go to the teleporter. I do find ooh, predatory. I do find the difficulty kind of interesting though, because this game is hard. This game is very, very hard. I am probably not going to finish this run just by virtue of me getting my ass kicked later on in the run. And when Returns first came out, a lot of people had issue with the difficulty because they were used to Risk of Rain 2, which is also difficult, but in different ways. And it frankly caught me off guard because it's been so long since I played the first game. But, I mean, to put it in perspective, I started with Risk of Rain 1. It is still very challenging even to me. Just because I've played the game for a while doesn't make it any easier. It's still a really hard game. But it does help me to put the difficulty into perspective a little bit better. But I think they nailed it. All the graphics look so nice. The new additions are really cool. Love the new items, love the new characters, except maybe Drifter. But I think I'm just not used to Drifter yet. I think I'll slowly learn to love them as I do more runs. But I only unlocked them a few runs ago. Ooh. Hey, Dios. But I love the new artifacts, I love the new items, I love the new characters, I love the new bosses. It's all just... This is my favorite remake that I've seen in a while. Maybe ever? I don't know. It's very rare to see remakes that have this level of effort and polish put into them. So just off of that, this really is something special. The closest thing that comes to mind for me is Spelunky 2, but that isn't even a remake. That's a full-on sequel. So I guess the best comparison there would be Spelunky Classic versus Spelunky HD. Ooh. It's the binding contract we all sign when we play Risk of Rain 2, and now I guess this game too. If anyone sees a Challenge of the Mountain, they're just contractually obligated unless they're doing like an all artifacts run or something. You just have to hit the Challenge of the Mountain. Or else, by the cosmic rule of law, you are a coward or something. I don't know. But I think I mentioned this, maybe it was during the Rhythm Doctor video, maybe it was some other time. It is really funny how indie release schedules work out sometimes, where for a while, I mean, there have been like little announcements here and there, but nothing crazy. And then this has been the fourth in a set of just things that I have been super, super excited for, and it released within, all four of those things released within like a week and a half of each other. But even before I figured out the joy that is this character, I've been meaning to record a video of just goofing around, doing a run, and talking. Because I've been hyped for this game for a while. Because I sort of alluded to it earlier, but I've played this game since Risk of Rain 1. I remember when they announced Risk of Rain 2, in just like a tiny little blog post of, hey, well, we're making another game and it's going to be fully 3D. And it was super exciting, and it was long before a lot of things. It was back when I still played Nuclear Throne with my friends on a more regular basis. But this game was... There was sort of a hamlet of roguelikes around this time. Of the procedurally generated roguelikes with just bone-grinding difficulty, and this was one of them. It was this game, Nuclear Throne, and Spelunky. Again, HD, specifically. Because now you have to grapple with 3 different versions of Spelunky and 3 different versions of this game. So it gets a mite confusing. But Spelunky is so good. Spelunky 2 might be my favorite roguelike of all time. It's close. It's definitely close. I do also really, really like Noita. That was cool. Come here, you. I gotta... let me change the zoom again. I like to alternate the zoom based on what my needs. I wish there was a way to do it a bit quicker than that, but whatever. It is meant as an accessibility setting first and foremost, so I guess it makes sense that you can't really... It's not really designed to change on the fly. Now there you are. Oh, wow. What the hell? Wicked Ring is an amazing pickup. I think just off of this, I know this isn't Boar Beach. Yeah, I thought so. So that is something that is very funny. There's one map generation. It used to be a 1 in 3 chance, now because of Risk of Rain Returns, it's a 1 in 6 chance. It's the original map design with the finished bridge. If you go all the way over to one side. Oh god, the Clayman. Oh! Gotta run. Okay. Man, this build is good. I think if I'm seeing that right, that Imp Overlord is all the way down at the surface. That's annoying. If what I see is correct. Excellent. Oh, and I got the little dude. Ooh, jeez. As is tradition for Risk of Rain 1, Imp Overlord kicks ass and will kick your ass. This Imp Overlord is a champ and his dad can beat up my dad. I'm a little worried about what's to come, though I did use the Challenge of the Mountain in that stage, so if I cool it a little bit, I should be fine. It's funny to see prescriptions. That item was a massive headache to unlock. And now that I see it, I am going to select it always. Whenever I have the opportunity. Oh god. That was stupid of me. Hang on. Let me out. Let me out. I went in the circle, didn't I? Hey, friend. Ow. Man, this is good with Wicked Ring. Nice. I wanted Snake Eyes stacks, but that works too. I love the revamped soundtrack. It is just the same songs, but now they are that much cleaner. Okay. Oh, hi. Scary. Thank you, Dios. Ow. Alright. It's about what I expected. I say we give it another try. Maybe I swap out. Do I try rapid fire? I think I try rapid fire. Such is life with this game. Sometimes you do well, sometimes you eat dirt. That's just the way that it works. This is going to feel a lot weirder since I can't apply knockback. But it seems like it scales a lot better. If there's lens maker's glasses, where were you when I needed you? This is a good start. You wouldn't really know it from looking, but like, this is already so much scaling. Also, this popped into my head. In the realm of my freaking Latin class, we finally reached the end of Metamorphoses Book 10. Oh my god, Soldier Syringe on top of this. We finally reached the end of Metamorphoses Book 10, the last story being Adonis. So we made it to the end of Orpheus's wild and crazy stories about how women are terrible. So I mean, at the end of it all, that was, pretty interesting. There were a lot of stories in there that I recognized, but I hadn't fully read through before. It feels like a wall you should be able to destroy. Yeah. That's better. Sorry, little imps. Gah. Kind of an awkward place to do a jump. There we go. But in a moment, I will. Because I still have I still have the book. I can just read through and give a recap, because it is... I do recommend reading through the Metamorphoses on your own. It is genuinely interesting. It's weird. And sometimes the culture... Sometimes you get the culture shock of, like, wait, what the hell just happened? What did he just do? Because there's a lot of Roman custom in Myth, and a lot of that Roman custom just does not make any sense if you think about it from a purely modern standpoint. But when we get to the stage transition, I'll grab the book off my shelf and leaf through it a little bit. Wow, that cleans. This run can go a really long way if I get crit stuff. Because that's the thing that's really funny about the first game, is that back in Risk of Rain 1, in Risk of Rain 2, the crit build is, I mean, well, it is what you go for. And almost every run eventually just turns into a, okay, if I want this run to scale to the best of my ability, it either needs to be proc chains, so I would need sticky bombs, ukuleles, sentient meat hooks, that kind of stuff, or it's a crit build, so you would need as many harvester scythes and predatory instincts as you can get your grubby little mitts on. In this game, the builds are a little bit more nuanced, and I kind of like that. Outside of command, that is. Ironically enough, when you're using the artifact of command in this game, the strategy is even more brain dead than it is in the second game. And I don't necessarily say that as a bad thing. I seriously missed that aspect of this game, that you could just, when you have command on, you have one goal and one goal only, and that is to bring the game to its knees by any means necessary. Your goal when you put on command is to see how long it takes for the game to crash. And like a lot of games that run in GameMaker, there is no minimum frame rate before the game completely crashes. Now the game can and will get to like 0.15 frames per second, and it will continue to run. It will just, at that point, you're basically rendering it in real time. There's my beloved barbed wire. Let's chill here for a second while I grab the book. Where are ya? Ah, there's an enemy. The lore of this boss intrigues me, because it is called Unkahama's Faithful, so, I mean, this boss existing does confirm... Ah! It confirms Unkahama is a thing in both games, which just leaves me with more questions of what the heck Nkahama is. I imagine it's a Kali, it's a like Kali-esque god of death, god or goddess of death. Okay. By the way, aerobatics lets you climb on walls, but that's not, I never use it because that's not its best feature. I use it because of the wave dash. Almost 10 minutes. I'll poke around a little bit and see if I can find some... Oh! Well, I mean, while I'm... I gotta grab onto the wall. While I'm here, may as well grab the monster log. Monster log, the area log. Come on, this shouldn't be this difficult. Thank you. Hello, gorgeous. Alright, we're leaving. I don't think it gets much better than that, and I wanna use and abuse these 5 wicked rings as long as possible. Holy cow. Anyway, Book 10 of the Metamorphoses. It opens up with the one story that, like, if you know nothing about, what the hell am I saying? If you know nothing else about Greek or Roman mythology, you probably at least know this story, the story of Orpheus and Eurydice. To make a long story short, Orpheus and Eurydice, Orpheus was a poor boy, but he had a beautiful voice. Orpheus and Eurydice were going to get married, and on their wedding day, Eurydice was chased away from the altar before it even began by a beekeeper with unfortunate intentions. In trying to escape that beekeeper, she was bitten by a snake and immediately rolled over dead. In like Cleopatra-esque fashion, got bit by a snake and then just instantly, not even time to give her medical attention, instantly bop dead. Now, as you could probably expect, Orpheus was not happy about this. But at face value, there's not really much you could do because, you know, she's dead. What do you do? What do you do there? Well, what Orpheus does is he marches all the way down to the underworld, and he asks Hades if he can have Persephone back. And the story goes, he sings this beautiful song that's so pretty that it moves Hades and Persephone, and they immediately call for her. But this is where the cynicism starts to come in, and the cynicism is honestly my favorite part of these stories. Because, oh my god, thank you very much. Ovid is an established Roman poet, and like a lot of Roman poets, he recognizes that his audience knows half these stories already. So he adds his own little flair at times. And in this case, the flair seems to really be a sort of mockery of Orpheus. Why? Well, let's continue with the story and it'll make sense. Orpheus ends up leaving with Eurydice, but Hades gives them the stipulation that Orpheus can't look back at Eurydice until they get back to the surface. Orpheus makes it 99% of the way back up to the top, is overcome with desire of like, oh god, oh fuck, where's my wife? Turns around, looks at Eurydice. Eurydice turns back to him and it's like, Why did you do that? And she just groans and goes back down to the underworld. Now, a couple of things happen from here. Orpheus, I mean, naturally, he's not allowed back. God knows he tries, but Charon let him through once, he's not going to let him through again. He goes back up to the surface, curses the gods, and becomes a pedophile. Which, yeah. Because the story goes, Orpheus was Thracian. And what they love to do with a lot of these stories is, what's the word for it? Especially Ovid. He loves to use stories to explain real-world phenomena. And the phenomena that Orpheus is attributed with is such practices occurring in Thrace. Again, ancient Greece. These practices are very icky and gross and not okay by modern standards, but in the ancient Greek world, it was a different time. It was the style of the time, something something. Doesn't mean I like it, but it is worth acknowledging that back then they were a little bit more keen on it. Anyway, Ovid clearly did not like this. So a lot of the depictions of Orpheus it's very meta. It's like Ovid is the one writing the story. And from that point onward, Orpheus tells this series of stories from his own perspective in pursuit of his own moral goals. But again, Ovid's the one actually telling this story, so at times it almost feels like he's making the story worse to make Orpheus look worse. Like he's intentionally leaving out certain bits and fluffing the details and changing things a little bit in a way that sort of reflects Orpheus's goals and also reflects his shortcomings. It's really interesting. Oh no. Where is that teleporter? I swear I saw it earlier. I think it is up here, right? Ah, we're down to just one Wicked Ring. That's really sad. Alright, time for the cheese. No. Yes, thank you. Is that cheesy? Yes, but I don't care. If this game is gonna pull a fast one on me at times, I'm more than willing to pull a fast one on it. Oh, come on, aim down. Ah, there's the teleporter. That took a second. Oh, Ifrit, let's go. Oh shoot, it's just boss monsters in general. I assumed that was... So Royal Medallion, whenever you hit a boss, it spawns one of those little wisps that gives you, I think it's a damage boost and a movement speed boost, or something like that. And I was under the impression that it didn't work, that it only worked with the teleporter boss, but I guess it works with any boss monster. That's really nice. I probably could have gone with Prophet's Cape too, because Prophet's Cape, whenever you successfully dodge an attack by something that makes you turn invincible, it'll heal you. And I don't remember if it's proportional to the damage you would have taken. I think it is. Either that or it's just like a flat, you gain like 3 health or something. It's not a lot. Okay. So let me quickly flip through. Ah, I didn't have time. I don't remember the first story, but I think it's Kyparissus. Because the first thing that Orpheus talks about is someone who is loved by Apollo. A young lad, again, pushing Orpheus's own morals. But the story is sort of like conflated and twisted in such a way that it makes the whole ordeal seem kind of silly and frivolous. And also not having a whole lot to do with Orpheus's eventual goal, besides the obvious. And he moves on, and we get one of the stories that is a bit more scattered, because after that is Hyacinthus. And Hyacinthus is kind of just, the story is kind of just strange. Because it's almost an adaptation of a myth, more than the myth itself. Because it's missing big chunks. Almost intentionally, from what I can understand. It's like, yeah, Orpheus is not a very good poet, and it shows, because he's telling this story to push his own agenda, and he's intentionally leaving out these bits because they would make his point not make as much sense, basically. Eh, may as well. Toxic Beast. Okay. This seems simple enough. Oh, I should not be over here. Never mind, it kind of works. Hey, another laser tether. Awesome. It's so much harder to find spare moments in this game compared to the first game, and also just compared to the second game. Because as soon as that teleporter is done charging, as soon as you're done collecting XP, you leave. Oh shoot, it's a beam drone too. Awesome. Oh shoot. I think I'd take these. Big boy medical drones. Alright, one moment. let me take this second of time. There we go. Okay. Now I can actually speak on this a little bit better. Now that I don't have to keep rifling through the book. I just pulled up the I pulled up the basically the spark notes, for lack of a better term. Isn't there a thing here? I could have sworn. Nah, whatever. So, in me feverishly trying to do two things at once, I actually missed one of the stories, so I may as well refer to it. There's also the story of Ganymede, who I always feel really bad for Ganymede. There are a couple of stories like this where it's like, oh, the gods see someone that they like, who they think looks really pretty, so they steal them. And it always comes across as really gross and just very unfortunate for the person that is just really, really beautiful and gets kind of stolen away in some form or another. And Ganymede is that unfortunate soul. Oh, I'm gonna love trashing all these drones. Prophet's Cape is nice. Smart shopper. So the story with Ganymede is that he was found by Zeus, and Zeus saw him and thought like, wow, that guy's really hot. And he turned into an eagle, flew down, grabbed him, and just brought him all the way up to Mount Olympus. And he just lives there. He just lives there now. And again, it always just comes across very unfortunate for Ganymede. And the story of Hyacinthus is another one where it's a little bit more complicated. And it seems like Ovid intentionally left some bits of it out on purpose, because the original version of the story is another story of Apollo and one of his bros. It's Apollo and this youth named Hyacinthus. Another one that he's just so enamored with. So much so that he ignores his duties on Olympus and kind of just romps around in the forest with them. And it reaches a point where Apollo hosts this grand, basically an Olympics, for the hell of it, for him and his bros. And this is where the story splits. In Ovid's version, there are only two boys that are competing alongside Apollo. There is Hyacinthus, and there's I don't think he's ever directly named, but it's heavily implied that the other boy is Kyparissus. And what ends up happening is Apollo throws a discus and it goes flying off into the sky, and he's so cool because he's Apollo, and, you know, he's Apollo. Everything he does is perfect, and he's so cool, and he's so hot, and, you know, Apollo things. Kyparissus goes to do the same thing, and instead of throwing the discus in the right direction, he misses, it ricochets off the ground, and whacks Hyacinthus right in the center of his forehead and instantly kills him. Speaking of, oops. How are we doing for time? 50 minutes. I could run one more. Why not? I can keep talking. Hyacinthus just dies basically on the spot. Apollo tries to save him, but you can't save a corpse. By the time Apollo tries to work his magic, it's already way too late. And Apollo is sitting there grieving. Let me swap out to the other primary, actually. I think I like using it a little bit better. He's sitting there grieving and he goes, well, that sucks a lot, but I will remember you by transforming you into a flower. And he transformed Hyacinthus into the hyacinth. Again, one of those situations where it's just, oh, the Romans wanted an explanation for this thing, so they wrote a story that explains it. And hyacinths, to my understanding, are like brilliant, like Roman purple. These brilliant purple flowers. I forget. I am not a plants guy, not as much as I probably should be, considering these stories sometimes. But after Hyacinthus, Orpheus goes on what I like to refer to as his incel rant. Part of his discussion. Where his other real goal in telling these stories is to shame women for acting out of lust. Because after his situation with Eurydice reached its end, he kind of just sat around and made emo poetry in Thrace for the rest of his life. But he was not a bad-looking dude, so he got asked out constantly and consistently turned people down. And over time, I imagine it just sort of evolved into oh, I'm never getting in a relationship again because all these women are so misogyny. And this is where that aspect of the story starts to show, because he tells a story about a group of women known as the Propietides. Now, these are another section of characters that I can't help but just feel bad for, considering their circumstances. Because their shameful acts were not of their own doing, not even close. They were a group of women who did not abide by the teachings of Venus. Basically, they were celibate. And Venus really didn't like that. So Venus turned them all into prostitutes, basically, because she felt like it. She turned them all into prostitutes, and then they all turned to stone. And I think it's, considering like the explanation half, I think it's supposed to be in reference to like some island statues of naked women, something like that. Like there's some link back to the real world there. But again, you kind of have to peel back the layers a little bit. You have the layer of Ovid telling the story. You have Orpheus as the speaker in the story that Ovid is telling. And in this story, Venus is shown as being, well, kind of just an asshole. The Propietides didn't really do much to deserve that. Venus was just like, oh, you're not respecting me as a god, so I'm going to ruin your life. Seems to be a common theme in Greek mythology, but also I'm going to conflate Greek and Roman mythology constantly because the Romans stole 90% of their myths from the Greeks. That's just the way that it works out. So whenever I'm referencing one and I say the other, that's my bad. But besides very specific myths and Etruscan household gods, everything else was stolen from the Greeks. And there is also this little side story about the Chorasti, which were a bunch of basically bandits who killed a bunch of visiting people at a holy temple. And Venus saw this and was completely appalled and decided to punish them, but as is tradition for the Metamorphoses, decided that death was too easy for them. and turn them all into bowls. It's an interesting sort of dichotomy with a lot of these that I guess in the Roman eye, losing humanity as a punishment was way worse than death. Because presumably that transformation was permanent, and it also meant that you couldn't go to the afterlife, if I understand correctly. I think only human souls were allowed to go. Or human shades, I should say, because Greek and Roman. Animals kinda just die. And they're sacrificed to the gods, and then they return to Mother Earth or something. But they sure as hell don't go to hell. After that, speaking of incel poetry, there's the story of Pygmalion, which you also might have heard of before, but it is arguably one of the weirdest, creepiest, just icky feeling stories in the whole book. Well, the second most. Wouldn't you know it, both of them come right, one comes right after the other. Mira is even more gross. But Pygmalion was a Redditor. I mean, Pygmalion was a master sculptor. Even to the point of being better than some of the gods. And usually, this is the thing that always kind of bugged me, usually that is a really bad thing. And if you are so good at something that you surpass the gods usually don't like that. But I think the difference is that he wasn't boastful about it. That's usually the deciding factor, I guess. Because like Ariadne was a master weaver, but the trouble was that she was very boastful about it. And boasted about how she was a really good weaver. Bonk. So Pygmalion was this king. And the thing about Pygmalion is he was weird. He didn't really have a relationship with a woman. Instead, he made a statue. And the statue was beautiful and super lifelike, and he loved the statue, and presumably the statue loved him back, it's hard to tell. And eventually, there is a festival, and he goes to the festival and makes an offering to Venus and wishes basically under his breath, because he's the king and he doesn't want people to hear this shit, I wish she was real. And Venus hears this and is like, I got you, bro. And turns the statue into a real woman. And it's kind of just icky. Especially considering that the statue was, from what I understand, made in the visage of Venus. Which just makes it even weirder. It's a very odd story. And then there's Mira, who, especially in Ovid's version, I just feel bad for Mira. She didn't do anything to deserve this. But Mira's main plight is she was cursed with a love of her father. And unfortunately, I do mean love in that way. And she tried to be rid of it, and it refused to leave. So, I mean, At times, this doesn't even feel like a Roman myth. It feels a lot more grim and a lot more depressing than your average mythology fare, because she tries to kill herself. And her nurse finds her attempting this and breaks her loose and asks her what the hell happened. If you need something, I'll help you. And Mira and the nurse slowly start talking, and Mira's nurse slowly realizes what's going on and is completely appalled, but still goes along with it for some reason. I guess just because... I don't even know. Like, I don't think it's ever made clear why the nurse continues to go along with it, even after knowing about this horrible sin. But she goes along with it anyway, and finds the king, who is completely drunk because there was a festival the previous night, introduces her, and bad things happen, and bad things continue to happen. And eventually the king finds out, she runs, and she is in the middle of the desert. I omitted a lot of stuff that is just gross. She's in the middle of the desert, and she gets down on her knees and prays to the gods, like, help. I am now way past the point where death is good enough for me, but life is also too good for me, so give me something in between. So the gods turn her into a myrrh tree, or a myrrh bush. It's a bush that's burned for incense. It's like it's that bit from the Bible about frankincense and myrrh. She became the myrrh, and frankincense is I don't know why it's called frankincense, but it is. That is one of my favorite words from antiquity. What else is there? Right. 2 stories left. After that, there is the story of... there's sort of one story interspersed with another. This is where things get even more complicated, because let me remind you of the layers again. There's Ovid telling the story, there's Orpheus telling the story, and then now add on a 3rd layer, because this next section is about Adonis. Another young lad who is absolutely gorgeous, and Venus ends up falling madly in love with him. To the point that she completely abandons her duties and her islands that she is normally so fond of, and kind of just romps around in the woods with him because she loves him. And in a weird sort of way, Venus starts telling him the story about Atalanta and Hippomenes. In a roundabout way of telling him why lions are to be feared at all times. Lions and, like, wild animals in general. So this story is another one that's actually pretty well known, to my understanding. Better known than Mira, at least. But, the story goes that Atalanta was a beautiful girl and also a master runner. Like, unbelievably good. And so, in a way that only a Greek myth can imagine up, if anyone wanted to have if anyone wanted to have Atalanta's hand in marriage, they needed to beat her in a foot race. If they couldn't, they were killed. That didn't stop a whole flock of people from coming and trying to win her hand in marriage, and dying. And all the while, Atalanta's sitting there slowly realizing, like, dude, why? Like, not only... Another one of those stories that doesn't really feel like Greek myth to me, because it's... Those themes of, like, self-loathing are usually... I don't normally see those at all in Greek myth, but maybe I'm just looking at the wrong ones. She slowly gets this sense of self-loathing of, like, why is everyone fighting over me? I'm not worth it. I'm not worth that much that people should put their lives on the line for me. Especially knowing that they're going to lose, because I know that I'm a good runner. But that doesn't stop Hippomenes from joining the fray. And Hippomenes is, I believe, I think the lineage was like he was the great-grandson of Poseidon or something like that. He's either the grandson or the great-grandson. I think he's the great-grandson of Poseidon. And he struts in and is like, yeah, I'm super hot, and I'm also the great-grandson of Poseidon. I challenge you to a race for your heart. And she's like, yeah, cool. And then off to the side, she slowly starts... She's sort of at war with herself of like, what is this kid doing? He's cute for sure, but I'm more sad because he's so young and yet already willing to put his entire life and livelihood on the line just for my sake. And I'm not worth that much. Then the day of the race comes, and before the race begins, Hippomenes makes a prayer to Venus. And Venus basically meets him in a back alley and gives him performance-enhancing golden apples for the race. Not for him to eat, of course, but to throw, because they're apples of desire. Oh, hello. I didn't even notice you. The race comes, both of them shoot off. Both of them are unbelievably fast, defying any metaphor. Atalanta has an easy lead. Hippomenes throws an apple off into the side. Atalanta, it catches her eye, and she immediately bolts away and runs after the apple. She makes it back to the track, and then, through a massive boost of speed, takes the lead again. And then it happens a second time. He throws the apple, Atalanta runs after it, and then immediately doubles back onto the track. That's not worth it. And then he throws a third. Off at a funny angle, so it'd be even harder for her to get back to the track in time. She hesitates a little bit, and then Venus compels her to go anyway, to go pick up the apple, and then also makes the apple heavier. Again, her actions feel a lot meaner in this, and I think that's because this is like a third-hand story. It's being initially told by Ovid, and then in the story by Ovid, there is a story being told by Orpheus, and in the story by Orpheus, there's a story being told by Venus. And there's just a lot of vested interest piling up. Ovid has a vested interest in making Orpheus look bad. Orpheus has a vested interest in making Venus look bad. It's weirdly nuanced for what it is. Ooh, insecticide is insane. Ooh. But hilariously enough, the reason why Venus is telling Adonis any of this is because of what happens next. Hippomenes ends up winning the race, and ends up winning Atalanta's heart in the process. And the two of them go to a shrine to, what is her name? The mother goddess. That was awful. Cybele, that's her name. Cybele, the mother goddess. And decides, very spur of the moment, to do it in the middle of a temple, which is really, 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 really bad. Besides the obvious problem, the Greeks and the Romans had this thing about pollution, basically. I think is the best way to describe it. Pollution and, like, polluting agents. And, among other things, death and sex were polluting agents, especially in temples. Part of the reason why the Karasti was so awful was because it was polluting a sacred place with the stench of death. And hilariously enough, it wasn't even a poorly timed impulse. It was a poorly timed impulse that was also guided by Venus. So again, Orpheus is just doing everything in his power to make Venus look as bad as possible. Like, not only did she do all of these other things, she also compelled Atalanta and Hippomenes to defile a temple that was sacred to Cybele. And true to form, Cybele immediately wanted to just kill them outright and send them down into the Styx, and then thought that death was too good for them. Again, kind of questionable, because they were compelled to do it, but whatever. And the two of them were slowly transformed into lions. Now again, the reason why I'm telling you any of this is because Venus tells this whole story and then turns to Adonis and is like, yeah, lions hate me. You wonder why? Lions hate me, as do all wild beasts. They don't understand love, so don't try. Even in the face of bravery, they will continue to fight until either you die or they die. And you are not going to win against them, so don't bother. I don't want you to die. I expect you don't want to die either, so don't do it. Adonis turns around and then instantly rouses a wild boar from his cave and dies. He gets gored by the boar, thrown out on the sand, and Venus at the time was basically on a plane. She was in the middle of flying to Cyprus in a chariot pulled by doves, or swans rather. And she hears this, freaks out, comes flying back on that chariot, sees Adonis, and starts grieving for him immediately, like, why? Was it not enough? She sits there and mourns and says, basically, not everything is in your power. Congratulations, hotshot. You found something that you're not able to do. And again, in sort of Orpheus fashion, Venus proceeds to talk about how the mourning is basically, it is a great loss to her, and that there will be a festival, and there will be a festival enacted in our honor. Yeah, our. It feels very self-centered, and that's because it is. Now, that closes out Book 10, but there's one more story right at the cusp of Book 11. Because you might wonder what happens to Orpheus after all of this. Well, as it happens, Orpheus is still an incel, and he's approached by some nymphs. Some drunk nymphs who are basically like, hey, you wanna try a night with us? And Orpheus basically tells them to go fuck themselves. The nymphs get mad, and because they were nymphs of Bacchus, you really don't want to mess with them. Because they proceed to rip him limb from limb. And toss his body into the river. And from there, his head floats in the river, basically all the way down to the Styx, singing all the while a mournful song. Thus ends the Metamorphoses. What did we learn? Narratives are weird, especially when there's this many people telling the stories on top of each other. A lot of people like, I've heard, and this is sort of a mentality that's gone away over time, but some people still sort of believe it, that Ovid is just not a very good writer, and I don't believe that in the slightest. I think Ovid is a great writer. But a lot of those sort of weird, those like oddities, further back in the day, were often chalked up to, oh, it's just Ovid, he's just like that. Which is a little unfair. We can't all be Horus. The other thing that's super sad is apparently, I don't remember what it was about. I believe it was about Medea? There was this... Nah, it wasn't Medea. It might have been Mira then. There was some tragedy that was written by Ovid, and according to... We don't have the tragedy, but we do have commentaries on the tragedy. And according to those, like, they're Ovid's best work. Such a shame then that they literally don't exist anymore. Great. Because it's a common thing, unfortunately, is the, it's referenced decently often as the burning the Library of Alexandria. Now, there are some people that believe that had it not been burned, we would be technologically like 100 years in the future. I don't personally ascribe to that, but I can't deny the metric shit ton of art and literature and music even that's just now completely lost, and it sucks. I wish that that hadn't happened. And it's really frustrating too, because the person that did that is our good friend, Mr. Napoleon. Trying to emulate Alexander the Great. Well, you did a good job there, Napoleon. A word to the wise, don't try and emulate the Greeks, you're just gonna end up blowing shit up. Okay, speaking of, that was sad. Alright. I'm not gonna drag this out for much longer. That was fun though. I'll be doing that again, but I just wanted to do this one thing because I'll be gone for the next few days. Because Thanksgiving. But for now, that'll be it for me. Thanks so much for watching.